Dante tore away Nora's staff badge for entering his suite, and she dragged him out as his phone rang. The moment the call connected, the penthouse exploded. Guards pinned Nora beneath a fallen door while Dante accused her of planting the device. His phone showed that the front desk had transferred the triggering call under her employee code. Nora reached for the scorched handset and pressed the hotel's internal callback sequence. A security office extension flashed on its broken screen. "I never transferred this call," she said. "Someone used my station after you fired me." As the night clerk, Nora knew outside calls could not reach private suites without an internal transfer, Sinwa. The callback proved the bomber was operating inside the hotel. Then, every lobby telephone began ringing together. One of those calls would trigger a second device hidden near the evacuation route. Dante had 4 minutes to find the occupied extension before frightened guests reached the lobby. Nora shoved the fallen door from her chest and seized a guard's radio. "Stop the evacuation. Nobody answers a telephone." The guard glanced at Dante instead of obeying. Below them, the fire alarm changed from sharp pulses to a recorded command directing everyone toward the main entrance. Nora heard hundreds of feet entering the stairwells. "That message is not part of our fire sequence," she said. "Your bomber recorded it." Dante's gaze hardened. Blood ran from a cut beside his ear. But he took the radio. "Rafa, close the lobby. Move everyone into the ballroom." The security chief answered through static. "The ballroom doors are locked from inside." A telephone rang behind the concierge desk 3 floors below. Nora could hear it through the open stairwell. Steady and patient. She ran. Dante caught her wrist. "You expect me to follow the woman whose code detonated my room, no?" Nora said. "I expect you to decide whether being right matters more than keeping those people alive." He released her. They descended through smoke, while 2 guards followed with weapons raised. On the lobby landing, Nora stopped. Every telephone had fallen silent except one black handset beside the revolving doors. 40 guests were already pushing toward it. Trapped between the alarm and the sealed ballroom, a gray box had been taped beneath the telephone shelf. Its green light flashed with every ring. "Do not shoot it," Nora warned. The vibration could close the circuit. She dropped to her knees, traced the handset cord, and found a second wire threaded through the wall plate. The device needed the connection tone created when someone answered. Nora slid a brass room key beneath the plastic clip and severed the telephone line without lifting the receiver. The ringing stopped. The green light remained on. No explosion came. Dante ordered his men to clear the guests through the kitchen corridor. Nora kept the brass key wedged in place, while a guard lifted the box into a blast shield. Its back panel carried a hotel inventory sticker assigned to security storage. She pointed at it. But Dante's attention shifted as Rafe arrived holding a tablet and a pistol. Her locker contained wiring, prepaid phones, and a printed floor plan. He said, on his screen. Hotel footage showed Nora entering Dante's suite carrying a maintenance case. Nora recognized the case. She had taken it upstairs after an anonymous guest reported a leaking ceiling. That true visit now looked like preparation for murder. Dante watched the footage twice. "Take her below," he said. Nora's throat tightened, but she refused to plead. As a guard pulled her toward the service elevator, Rafe's tablet chimed. A staff badge was moving across the 19th floor toward Dante's daughter's room. Nora looked at the badge still clenched in Dante's bloody hand. "If that is me upstairs," she said as the elevator doors began closing. "Then who are you sending me downstairs with 3 nights earlier?" Nora Ellis had been the person the Halcyon Grand noticed only when something went wrong. At 43, she had learned that a calm voice could move an angry millionaire faster than a threat, and that a guest's smallest complaint often exposed the building's largest weakness. She worked behind the walnut front desk in a navy uniform tailored around her full figure, answering phones, balancing accounts, and quietly correcting mistakes made by people whose salaries tripled hers. At 1:17 in the morning, a bride arrived crying because her late mother's necklace had vanished from a locked suite. The daytime manager had already blamed housekeeping. Nora checked the electronic lock. Then the linen schedule. Then the elevator camera. She found the necklace inside a folded crib sheet delivered to the wrong floor. She returned it without accusing the exhausted attendant who had made the mistake. People remember whether you protected their dignity, she told the young bellman beside her. That sentence had once cost Nora a better job. 5 years earlier, she had refused to erase footage, proving a wealthy guest struck a cleaner. The hotel dismissed Nora instead of losing the account. The Halcyon hired her for nights, where her skill remained useful and nearly invisible. Dante Moretti passed through the lobby at 2 each morning after meetings in the private restaurant. He owned the hotel through a legitimate holding company, but men lowered their voices when he entered. Nora knew enough not to ask which contracts were signed upstairs and which promises were enforced at the docks. She also knew he always paused at the desk to ask whether his daughter Sophia had returned from college. He never asked Nora's name, though she had answered him for 4 years. Miss Moretti came in at 11:40. Nora said that night. She requested no calls. Dante nodded and continued toward the elevators. Behind him walked Rafe Calder, head of security and the man Dante trusted as he had once trusted his father. Rafe wore grey suits, carried no visible weapon, and remembered every employee's weakness. He stopped at Nora's station. Tomorrow's founders' auction cannot suffer a single disruption. The auction would finalize a waterfront redevelopment agreement shared by 3 families and the city. If the signatures were not completed before midnight, the financing collapsed and control of the Eastern Freight Terminal passed to a rival consortium. The switchboard has been tested, Nora replied. The fire panel has not. Security cancelled the inspection. Rafe's smile never reached his eyes. Then concern yourself with telephones. After he left, Nora found an internal call listed from the sealed 19th floor. The room had been empty for 6 months during renovation. She assumed a contractor had tested a line, so she called engineering. No crew had entered. A second call appeared 12 minutes later, routed through her own employee code, while her terminal remained locked. Nora printed the nightly switchboard report before the system could overwrite it at dawn. The narrow paper curled warmly into her hand. On it, the phantom call ended at the security office. She carried the report toward Rafe's desk, then stopped when she saw him through the glass wall speaking with the telecommunications contractor who had supposedly gone home. Rafe placed a security storage key on the table between them. Nora stepped back before either man noticed her. She folded the report inside the lost and found ledger. The one book no executive ever opened. When she returned to the front desk, Dante was waiting beside an unanswered telephone. You told my daughter not to receive calls, he said. Why is someone trying to reach her room? Nora checked the display. The caller's extension did not exist, because they do not want to speak to her, she said. They want the hotel to believe a connection was made, for the first time in 4 years. Dante looked directly at her name tag. Nora, he said. Find out who. Nora began with the harmless explanation. Old hotel systems produced ghost calls when a line was disconnected badly, and the Halcyon still carried copper wiring behind its marble walls. She asked an engineer to test the 19th floor junction without mentioning Rafe. The engineer reported that every dormant line was physically cut. Yet another call appeared at 2:40. Again under Nora's code. This one lasted exactly 11 seconds and ended at Dante's private suite. Nora changed her password, locked her station, and watched the terminal from the concierge desk. At 3:10, her code opened a transfer while her hands were folded in front of her. Someone had copied more than her password. They had duplicated the small hardware token inside her badge. She called the software vendor from an outside line. The technician confirmed that a second token could exist only if someone had used the hotel's executive enrollment terminal. A machine stored inside security. Nora asked for the enrollment record. The technician's voice changed. Your security director requested that file an hour ago. The call disconnected. Nora tried Dante's private number, but Rafe answered. Mr. Moretti is unavailable. Then tell him his telephone system is being used to imitate staff. Bring me what you found. Nora stared at the security camera above her station. Rafe could already see the printed strip beside her hand. I have nothing yet. She lied. She took the paper report to the basement accounting room, where old records were stored beyond the digital network. Inside a carton marked minibar taxes, she found monthly invoices for telephone relays that the hotel had never received. Each invoice carried Rafe's approval and payments to Bellwether Systems, a shell vendor sharing an address with an abandoned warehouse. The newest order included 4 connection-triggered switches and a delivery deadline matching the auction. That was no software prank. Nora photographed only the invoice numbers. Unwilling to remove documents and give Rafe a theft charge, she then tested one more possibility, using a vacant desk code. She transferred a call to the renovated floor. Nothing happened. Using her own code, she heard a faint click before the line connected. Her credential had been programmed as an activation key. She pulled the cord from her terminal. The click continued inside the wall. Someone had installed a bypass beyond the desk. A maintenance request appeared on her screen at that exact moment, water leaking inside Dante's penthouse suite. It carried the chief engineer's authorization. But the chief engineer was home recovering from surgery. Nora called Sophia and asked whether her father was upstairs. He just went in. The young woman said. Rafe told him the room had been cleared. Nora reached the private elevator as Rafe emerged from the corridor. Where are you going? A guest reported a leak. Not your job. Neither is letting a ceiling fall on the owner. Rafe stepped close enough for Nora to smell cedar on his coat. You have a talent for confusing usefulness with authority. He held out his hand for her badge. Nora pressed the elevator button instead. And you have a talent for cancelling inspections. The doors opened. She entered before he could stop her. But his gaze followed her upward. In the penthouse, no water stained the ceiling. A maintenance case waited beneath Dante's desk. Although Nora had brought none, she heard a soft pulse from inside it. Dante entered behind her with 2 guards. Rafe's voice came through his radio, accusing Nora of unauthorized access. Dante saw her beside the case and ordered her badge removed. Then his phone began to ring. Nora recognized the 11-second pattern. She did not explain. She grabbed Dante and ran. The service elevator doors closed on Nora and the guard beside her. Dante remained in the ruined lobby, staring at the badge moving across Rafe's tablet, while Nora's real badge rested in his palm. The guard pressed the sub-basement button. Nora watched his thumb. A black crescent marked the nail. The same conductive dye used by technicians who handled telephone relays. Security staff do not repair switchboards, she said. His hand moved toward his jacket. Nora struck the emergency stop before he could draw his weapon. The car jolted between floors. He slammed her against the brass rail. But Nora drove the heel of her shoe into the maintenance panel. She had watched engineers reset that elevator dozens of times. The narrow escape hatch released. The guard caught her ankle as she climbed, tearing her stocking and cutting her calf against the metal edge. Nora kicked free, pulled herself onto the car roof, and crawled into darkness. A shot punched through the hatch. She followed the cables toward the nearest landing while the guard restarted the elevator below her. At level 9, Nora forced the manual latch and rolled into a linen room. Her leg bled through her skirt. She wrapped it with a clean pillowcase, then heard Rafe's voice on every radio in the building. Nora Ellis is armed and responsible for both devices. Detain her on sight. She had no weapon, no telephone, and no way to reach Dante without passing Rafe's network. She went instead to the Lost and Found office for the printed switchboard report. The ledger lay open. The paper was gone. A camera turned toward her as she entered, its red light already burning. On the desk sat a pistol and a bundle of cash. Rafe had built another picture before she arrived. Nora stepped backward without touching either object. Sophia emerged from behind the shelving, pale and breathing fast. "Your badge opened my door," she whispered. A man in hotel uniform came inside. Nora guided her toward the laundry passage. "Did you see his face?" "No," he said. "My father sent him." Footsteps approached from both corridors. Nora placed Sophia inside an empty linen cart and pushed it toward the service ramp. She stayed behind to draw the search team away. When Dante reached the office minutes later, footage showed Nora entering, taking the pistol, then leaving through the opposite door. Rafe had removed the seconds where she rejected the planted objects. He also played audio of Nora transferring the penthouse call. The voice sounded like hers because it was assembled from thousands of recorded greetings at the front desk. Dante asked where Sophia was. Rafe displayed a message sent from Nora's account. "Your daughter is safe if you cancel the auction." The demand struck Dante at his deepest weakness. His wife had died after he ignored a threat he considered impossible. And he had built every rule since then around control. Nora's actions had saved him. But the images, voice, equipment, and missing daughter formed a wall of partial truth. "Find here," Dante said. "Bring Sophia home. If Nora resists, do what is necessary." In the loading alley, Nora released the linen cart. Sophia climbed out and begged her to come along. Nora shook her head. "Your father's men will recognize you. They will shoot at me." She gave Sophia the address of a retired housekeeper who had raised her after her mother died. "Tell your father the call records are on paper, not the server." Sophia left beneath a kitchen coat. Nora limped towards the abandoned Bellwether warehouse, knowing Rafe expected her to run. Instead, she was going to find what his invoices had purchased. Sophia returned to the Halcyon 40 minutes later with the retired housekeeper at her side. Dante crossed the lobby in 3 strides and pulled his daughter against him. Relief lasted only until she told him Nora had saved her. "She put me in the cart and stayed behind," Sophia said. "The man who entered my room wore a hotel uniform. Nora never touched me." Rafe argued that Nora had released Sophia to protect her escape. Dante wanted that answer because it restored order. But 3 details resisted it. First, Nora had sent Sophia to the one woman who could verify her safety. A kidnapper seeking leverage would not surrender it. Second, the cloned badge continued moving while Dante held the original. Rafe blamed a delayed system update. Dante tested that claim by carrying Nora's badge into the elevator. Its location changed immediately. The moving copy was real. The third contradiction arrived when Dante asked Rafe how the penthouse bomb had been triggered. By the connection tone, Rafe replied. Dante had never told him that. Nora had identified the mechanism only after Rafe left the lobby. Rafe corrected himself too quickly. The device team briefed me. Which technician? Dante asked. The one you sent downstairs with Nora. Raf's jaw tightened. He said the guard had disappeared. Dante ordered the security storage inventory sealed and took command of the hotel cameras himself. Nora's absence became visible within an hour. Guest lists were duplicated. 2 families received the same restricted suites. A city commissioner's dietary warning vanished. The staff had depended on Nora's quiet corrections without recording them. Dante found a notebook beneath the front desk containing room changes, access failures, and names of employees who needed help rather than punishment. Besides Sophia's name, Nora had written, "Never confirm her location by telephone." Dante remembered how often Nora had protected his daughter while he barely acknowledged her. Done. He viewed the footage from the lost and found office, frame by frame. The clock in the corner jumped forward 9 seconds when Nora approached the planted pistol. The carpet shadows shifted. Someone had cut the recording. Dante gave Rafe a false instruction: move all recovered telephone equipment to Vault C. Then he watched the cameras. Within 7 minutes, a masked technician entered Vault C, carrying a case from security storage. Dante's men stopped him, but a poison capsule hidden in the man's tooth killed him before questioning. On his sleeve was dust from the Bellwether warehouse. Rafe had acted on information given only to him. Yet Dante still lacked proof that would survive the family council. Accusing his father's oldest ally without evidence could split the organization before the auction and deliver the freight terminal to their rivals. Dante went to Nora's locker alone, behind a photograph of Nora and an elderly woman. He found a rent receipt for a tiny apartment and a note reminding her to buy diabetes medicine for her mother. No unexplained money existed. The wiring Rafe displayed had already been removed as evidence. Dante finally saw the shape of his mistake. Nora's loyalty had cost her safety, while his trust in rank had increased her danger. He called off the kill order publicly, but Rafe controlled enough men to ignore a quiet correction. Dante needed to find Nora first. He took the Bellwether invoice address and left through the kitchen in a delivery van, carrying no Moretti driver, no security radio, and the brass key Nora had used to stop the second bomb. Nora entered the Bellwether warehouse through a broken loading door shortly before sunrise. Her injured leg shook whenever she put weight on it, and dried blood stiffened the pillowcase beneath her skirt. Rows of empty shelves stood under a leaking roof. She found telephone housings, relay boxes, and hotel inventory labels in a locked cage. The padlock was new, but its hinge screws were exposed. Nora used a discarded metal ruler to turn them 1/4 at a time. Inside, she photographed serial numbers with a prepaid phone taken from an unlocked workbench. One crate was empty, except for gray foam cut to hold 4 switches. 3 had already been used. The 4th remained connected to a practice handset. Beside it lay a reel recorder containing fragments of Nora's voice. "Welcome to the Halcyon. May I transfer your call? Please hold." Someone had constructed her confession from words she spoke every night. Nora reached for the reel. A gun clicked behind her. Dante stood between the shelves, his coat dark with soot and his temple bandaged. "Put it down." Nora gave a short, bitter laugh. "You found me surrounded by the equipment used to frame me. I suppose that makes your decision easier." He lowered the gun first. "Sophia told me what you did. Sophia survived, despite your decision. Not because of it." The words landed. Dante did not defend himself. He placed Nora's badge and the brass key on a crate. "I believed evidence designed by someone who knew exactly what I feared. That explains my mistake. It does not excuse it." Nora wanted the apology to matter, but her calf burned and the elevator guard was still missing. "Rafe knows you came here." "I told no one." "Your van crossed a traffic camera his security office monitors. Headlights swept across the warehouse windows. Nora killed the practice handset switch before it could signal their position. Men entered through both loading doors. Dante offered her a pistol. She refused it. "If I fire in here, we lose every unburned record." She led him behind the cage and pointed to the old freight controls. The warehouse had once stored hotel furniture, and its overhead track still carried suspended platforms. Nora released a counterweight. A steel pallet dropped between them and the attackers, forcing the men into one narrow aisle. Dante used 2 precise shots to break the lights above that aisle, then followed Nora through a maintenance tunnel beneath the loading dock. A bullet grazed his shoulder before the hatch closed. They emerged beside the river. Nora bound his wound with the clean edge of her coat while he studied the serial photographs on her phone. Rafe had purchased the switches through an account belonging to the Moretti Foundation, but authorization carried Dante's digital signature. "He can say I ordered everything," Dante said. "Then stop trying to prove what he bought." Nora replied. "Prove what he does next." She explained the remaining switch. If they leaked a false destination for it, the person controlling the plan would move to recover or activate it. Dante looked at her not as an employee, but as the only strategist who had understood the attack before it began. "We work your way," he said. Nora met his eyes. "No orders. Full information. Sophia stays outside the hotel." "Agreed. And if you turn on me again, I leave with the evidence." His answer came without hesitation. "Agreed." They walked toward an all-night clinic operated by a physician Dante trusted outside Rafe's chain. For the first time, he adjusted his pace to Nora's injured step instead of expecting her to follow his. The physician closed Nora's calf with 6 stitches and warned her that running could tear them open. Dante's shoulder required only a dressing, but the movement of his left arm remained limited. By 8 in the morning, Sophia was moved to a church residence protected by women who had served the Moretti family before Rafe joined it. Nora and Dante met in the basement records room of an old hotel Dante owned under another company. Nothing there connected to the Halcyon network. Nora built the evidence in 3 layers. The cloned badge and altered footage proved the official accusation was incomplete. The bellwether invoices, inventory labels, and voice reel connected the equipment to hotel security. None proved Rafe had knowingly ordered murder. For that, they needed him to act on information only the bomber would value. Dante told the family council that 1 unused relay had been recovered and stored inside Suite 814 at the Halcyon. In truth, the relay remained inside a bank deposit box. Suite 814 did not exist. The hotel skipped that number because of an old fire. Only Nora's private maintenance index mapped the number to a sealed service room behind the auction stage. She gave the false map to Dante, who passed it to Rafe while pretending his doubt about Nora had returned. A second copy went to the council attorney. If Rafe moved toward the non-existent suite, his knowledge would connect him to the device. Technology alone was not enough. Rafe had erased cameras and cloned badges once. Nora therefore visited the retired chief engineer, Mr. Alvarez, who had kept carbon copies of every security renovation order. He produced an original paper request signed by Rafe for an independent emergency telephone loop inaccessible to normal fire controls. The order itself was legal, but it placed Rafe at the origin of the hidden network. Nora also recovered the nightly switchboard printer from a locked cabinet. Its ribbon preserved faint impressions of every call, including transfers erased from the server. A forensic accountant chosen by the council sealed the ribbon and Alvarez's order in separate evidence envelopes. The founders' auction still had to proceed. Cancellation before the waterfront agreement was signed would trigger an automatic transfer of voting rights to the rival consortium. Rafe had built his deadline around that clause. Dante could postpone the public auction for only 1 hour without losing the terminal. Nora studied the ballroom plans. Rafe controlled the main exits, the security office, and the digital alarms. She chose analog defenses, manual door wedges, brass master keys, written guest routes, and 3 trained housekeepers stationed at stair releases. If the network failed, paper instructions would remain. Dante wanted Nora away from the event. Your name is still attached to 2 bombs, which is why Rafe expects me to hide, she said. He will act only if he believes you still distrust me. The plan required Dante to condemn her before the council, preserving Rafe's confidence until he entered the full service room. Nora agreed, but the public rejection reopened a wound neither apology had repaired. Say only what the trap needs, she warned. Dante promised. That afternoon, he entered the Halcyon through the front doors and announced that Nora Ellis remained the principal suspect. Rafe watched from the balcony with a satisfied stillness. Then he sent one message from a disposable phone. Move the girl before the auction. The recipient was the missing elevator guard, already standing outside the church residence where Sophia was supposed to be safe. The women guarding the church noticed the same black crescent beneath the stranger's thumbnail when he presented a forged fire inspection order. They rang the chapel bell twice, the signal to move Sophia into the old crypt passage beneath the garden. The elevator guard understood he had been recognized. He struck the driver, seized Sophia's abandoned phone from the front seat, and fled before the neighborhood patrol closed both streets. His failure gave Rafe a weapon almost as useful as the girl. At 6 that evening, the Halcyon ballroom filled with bankers, city officials, union representatives, and members of 3 families whose peace depended on the waterfront agreement. Smoke damage remained hidden behind velvet curtains. Dante stood on the stage with his left shoulder stiff beneath his tuxedo. Rafe remained at his side, publicly loyal and privately certain that Nora had lost Dante's trust. Nora watched from a narrow service gallery above the auction wall. Her navy uniform had been replaced by a dark dress and flat shoes that did not pull against her stitches. 3 housekeepers waited at the manual stair releases with written evacuation routes folded inside their sleeves. The council attorney carried the sealed evidence to a safe outside the hotel. Nothing decisive depended on a camera, a wireless signal, or one person surviving. Dante opened the meeting by naming Nora as the suspect responsible for the attacks. A photograph of her appeared on the ballroom screen. Murmurs moved through the guests. Rafe looked toward the gallery only once. Dante continued with the words the trap required, but then crossed the line Nora had given him. She abused the trust of this hotel and every family inside it. Nora's fingers closed around the railing. Dante saw her reaction through the stage curtain and understood too late that he had allowed performance to become cruelty. Rafe leaned closer to him. "You finally see what she is." Dante forced himself to nod. Behind the stage, one of Rafe's men used the false map to locate the service room marked as Suite 814. The room contained no relay, only a paper strip bearing a message. "You were sent by someone who knows what never existed." The man tried to retreat, but 2 council guards detained him. In his pocket, they found a handwritten instruction signed with the letter R. The trap had caught an operator, not Rafe. Rafe received no radio warning because Nora had blocked the service room walls with copper mesh. He sensed the delay anyway. At 7:12, Sophia's stolen phone sent Nora a message. "They found me. Do not tell my father. Come behind the stage alone." Nora knew Sophia would never ask her to hide danger from Dante. The message was false, but its timing exposed Rafe's contingency. If Nora ignored it, he might realize Sophia had escaped and change his plan. She left the gallery to keep him confident. 2 men caught her at the stage passage and pulled a hood over her head. They bound her wrists inside the sealed service room. Rafe entered only after searching her for a transmitter. "Dante will sign before midnight," he said. "Your guilt merely prevents questions." He did not explain his plan or confess to the bombs. He did not need to. Through the wall, Nora heard the auctioneer announce the final waterfront document. Rafe removed the hood long enough to show her Sophia's phone, then placed a connection switch beside the ballroom line. If Dante refused, the evacuation doors close, and panic completes what the first blast began. He left Nora guarded and returned to the stage. The auction reached the signature phase. Dante delayed, claiming a missing page. But the legal window had narrowed to 30 minutes. Rafe's man failed to return from the false room. Suspicion hardened in Rafe's face. He signaled the security office. Every screen in the ballroom changed to footage of Dante entering the Bellwether warehouse and meeting Nora. Rafe addressed the council before Dante could speak. He concealed the woman who attacked this hotel. He has compromised the agreement and the safety of every guest. Armed men emerged from the balcony. Several were Rafe's private recruits wearing Moretti insignia. He produced an emergency proxy, transferring Dante's voting authority and the Eastern Terminal to a management company controlled through Bellwether. The family council hesitated. Rafe activated the false fire message. Doors locked. Lights failed. And the recorded voice directed guests toward the main lobby. Dante's loyal guards found their radios dead. Rafe placed a pen before him. "Sign, or the next call turns this room into a grave." Dante looked at the frightened guests, then toward the service gallery where Nora should have been. Her chair was empty, believing Rafe had taken her and Sophia. Dante signed the first page to buy time. Rafe smiled and reached for the telephone that would confirm the transfer. Behind the stage, Nora felt the connection relay vibrate against the floor. She recognized the rhythm from the penthouse. The final device was not hidden among the guests. It was wired into the antique call panel directly beneath her chair. Nora pressed her bound hands against the wooden stage brace and listened. The relay clicked once for an incoming line, twice for a transfer, then paused before connection. She had seconds before Rafe lifted the receiver. The guard outside her room watched the ballroom through a narrow window and never noticed the brass master key sliding beneath the opposite door. One of the housekeepers had followed Nora's written fallback if she vanished. Open every mechanical passage in sequence. Nora trapped the key beneath her shoe, drew it upward with both feet, and rubbed its sharp edge against the plastic restraint. The band split as Rafe's telephone began to ring. She freed one hand, opened the antique call panel, and found the independent loop Mr. Alvarez had described. Rafe's system bypassed the digital switchboard, but the old copper line still crossed the nightly printer circuit. Nora moved one plug from the ballroom output to the dead extension assigned to suite 814. Rafe answered. Instead of completing the device circuit, his call returned through the non-existent room and struck the mechanical printer downstairs. The machine began stamping the source extension onto paper. The relay beneath Nora's chair went silent. She opened the service door with the brass key. The guard turned, but Nora shoved the heavy fire door into his injured knee and locked him inside. She limped onto the stage as Rafe demanded that Dante sign the final page. "Do not sign it," she said. Hundreds of faces turned toward the woman they had been told was a bomber. Rafe raised his gun. Dante moved between them, though his wounded shoulder prevented him from reaching his own weapon quickly. Nora did not hide behind him. She stepped beside him and held up the telephone cord she had removed from the antique panel. "Mr. Calder just called a suite that does not exist," she said. The hotel returned his call through the emergency loop he secretly commissioned. In the basement, a housekeeper tore the fresh strip from the printer and carried it into the ballroom. The council attorney compared its timestamp with the call showing on Rafe's handset. They matched to the second. Rafe laughed once. "I run hotel security. Of course, my telephone connects to emergency lines." It was a credible answer, and several council members shifted. Nora gave him room to make it. "Then, explain why your operator carried a map to Suite 814. The detained man was brought from the service corridor with Rafe's written instruction in his pocket. Rafe denied the handwriting. Nora produced no miraculous confession. She asked Mr. Alvarez to step forward. The retired engineer identified the original paper order, creating the independent loop. The order carried Rafe's signature and a serial number matching the bellwether relay recovered from the warehouse. Rafe argued that Dante had authorized the purchase. Dante admitted his digital signature appeared on the invoices. It was copied from a foundation payment. He said, "That proves fraud, not attempted murder." Rafe seized the opening. "Exactly." Nora nodded. "So we tested intent." She revealed that the real unused relay had never entered the hotel. Only Rafe received the false location. His operator had moved toward it, and Rafe had just called it without asking why the hotel skipped room 814. More important, the proxy on the table named Bellwether Harbor Management as recipient of Dante's terminal rights. The same shell vendor had purchased every connection switch. Objective, access, and action now met in public. Rafe's face changed. He abandoned denial and pressed a second button hidden beneath his watchband. The antique relay did not respond because Nora had diverted its line. Rafe pressed again. Nothing happened. The housekeepers pulled the manual wedges, opening 3 exits, exactly as planned. Guests moved through written routes instead of the false alarm. Rafe fired toward the evidence strip. Dante struck his wrist with his good arm, changing the bullet's path. Nora dropped behind the auction table, grabbed its microphone cable, and swept Rafe's ankle as 2 council guards closed in. He fell but drew a knife. Dante could not restrain him with his injured shoulder. Nora kicked the proxy folder across the polished floor, forcing Rafe to step onto loose pages. His shoe slipped. The council guards pinned him before he recovered. In the balcony, his recruits raised their weapons, then saw every exit open and their leader disarmed. Most surrendered. The missing elevator guard was brought in from the church district alive. The women had recorded his forged inspection order and his call to Rafe. Faced with the fresh call strip, the bellwether contract, and his own failed abduction, he agreed to testify. Dante took the microphone. He did not claim victory. He faced the audience that had watched him condemn Nora. Nora Ellis entered my suite to save my life. She protected my daughter, preserved this hotel's records, and stopped 3 attacks while I treated her as the criminal. The accusation was false. My judgment made it dangerous. He turned toward Nora. The truth belongs to her. Nora described the cloned badge, the edited footage, and the call sequence in plain language. No one interrupted. When she finished, the city commissioner ordered the waterfront signing suspended under the emergency fraud clause, preserving the terminal rights until a clean vote could occur. Rafe's plan had failed without sacrificing the agreement. As federal bomb investigators entered through the now open doors, Dante placed his weapon on the auction table and agreed to surrender every hotel record connected to the attacks. Correcting his mistake would expose his legitimate empire to scrutiny. But he no longer asked Nora to bear the cost of protecting it. Rafe Calder survived to face charges for attempted murder, conspiracy, unlawful explosives, kidnapping, and fraud. The elevator guard's testimony led investigators to 2 bellwether accounts and the telecommunications contractor who had cloned Nora's voice. The accountant verified that Rafe intended to obtain the Eastern Terminal through the emergency proxy, then blamed the explosions on a rival family. The family council stripped him of rank before federal agents removed him from the hotel. Dante cooperated with the bombing inquiry and surrendered contracts that could have protected him from embarrassment. The process cost him 2 board seats, a shipping license, and the unquestioned obedience he once considered the same thing as loyalty. No guest died. 4 guards and 7 hotel workers required treatment, and Dante created a compensation fund under independent control rather than attaching his family name to their recovery. Nora spent 2 weeks healing at her mother's apartment. Dante sent no guards and made no demand that she return. He delivered her unpaid wages through an attorney, including compensation for the firing, and added a written statement, accepting responsibility. Nora sent back the hotel key he included. A month after the auction, the Halcyon reopened its ballroom for a meeting of every employee and contractor who had been working during the attacks. Dante stood on the same stage where he had named Nora a traitor. This time, her name appeared alone on the screen without the word suspect beneath it. I fired Nora Ellis before hearing her explanation. He said, I allowed her position to count against her and another man's rank to count in his favor. She does not owe this hotel forgiveness or service. I owe her a public repair equal to the public harm. He restored her record, withdrew every accusation in writing, and announced that the altered footage and false evidence would remain available to her legal counsel. Then he stepped away from the microphone. Nora addressed the staff. She thanked the housekeepers, engineers, clerks, and kitchen workers whose knowledge had opened doors when the security system failed. She refused Dante's offer to become hotel operations director. I spent too many years being valuable only when someone powerful needed a problem solved. She said, I will not return under a better title to the same dependence. Dante accepted the refusal without bargaining. 3 months later, Nora opened Ellis Hospitality Safety, an independent firm specializing in analog backups, staff protection procedures, and access audits. Her first contract came from a hotel across the river, not from Dante. Her second came from the city. Only after she had built a client list of her own did she accept the Halcyon as her third account. Her contract gave her authority to stop an event for safety reasons, report outside the Moretti chain, and publish findings without permission. Dante signed every condition. Nora's first Halcyon audit tested whether those signatures meant anything. She arrived without warning on a rainy Tuesday and asked the night team to demonstrate the new evacuation route. A supervisor produced a polished binder, but the youngest bellman quietly showed Nora a staff stairwell, chained shut because executives disliked workers crossing the renovated lobby. The chain violated the plan that had saved hundreds of guests. Nora ordered the West Wing closed until it was removed, and every shift completed a live drill. The hotel board objected within minutes. A wedding occupying that wing would lose nearly $500,000 if relocated. Two directors called Nora's decision emotional and reminded Dante that she had once been a clerk. He did not answer for her. He asked Nora to present her findings. She placed the chain on the conference table, followed by unsigned incident reports showing 3 employees had already complained. A safety plan that disappears when wealthy guests are inconvenienced is decoration. She said, "My order stands under the contract you approved." One director demanded Dante overrule her. He looked at Nora. "Do you need more information from me?" "No." "Then, this is her decision." The wedding was moved. Dante absorbed the cost without attaching his name to Nora's order or asking her to soften the written report. The live drill later revealed a second failure. Security radios could not reach the laundry basement. Nora hired 2 former housekeepers as field auditors because they knew which locked doors executives never saw. She also brought the young bellman who had helped recover the bride's necklace into her training program. None owed loyalty to Dante. Their contracts protected them for reporting unsafe practices, even when the client was powerful. When the corrected West Wing reopened, Nora found a small brass plaque beside the staff stairwell. It did not carry Dante's name or hers. It read, "Every person who works here has the right to an open exit." Nora asked who had chosen the words. Dante said the night team had. He had merely paid for the plaque. That answer mattered more than an expensive gesture would have. It proved he was beginning to understand that repair was not control wearing a kinder face. Nora approved the wing, submitted her invoice, and left through the front entrance while the board watched. Dante did not follow until his own meeting had ended. Their personal repair moved more slowly. He began with coffee in public places where Nora could leave whenever she wanted. He listened when she spoke about her mother, the cleaner she had failed to protect 5 years earlier, and the years of being praised privately but ignored publicly. Dante spoke about his wife's death and the fear that had turned control into his only language. Nora did not cure that wound. She required him to recognize when it was making decisions for him. He learned to ask instead of summon. At Rafe's preliminary hearing, Nora testified for 3 hours, while his attorneys tried to reduce her work to guesses made by an unqualified clerk. She explained each call, timestamp, and mechanical switch without raising her voice. Dante sat behind the federal prosecutor and remained silent. Even when the defense blamed Nora for entering the penthouse, she did not need him to rescue her testimony. When the judge ruled that the evidence could proceed to trial, Dante met her outside and asked whether she wanted company. Nora said she wanted 10 quiet minutes alone. He waited across the street instead of beside her. When she finally crossed to him, it was her choice. She learned that accepting care did not erase independence. 6 months after the auction, Dante invited her to dinner and made clear that refusing would change nothing in her contract. Nora accepted because she wanted to, not because he had finally noticed her. Their affection grew through ordinary proofs, He followed her evacuation plan without argument. She trusted him with her mother's hospital appointment. He supported Sophia's decision to study hotel management outside the family business. Nora allowed him to see her tired without apologizing for it. 1 year later, the restored penthouse opened for inspection. The new system used 2 independent call paths, mechanical door releases, and a paper record no single security chief could erase. Nora completed the audit, while Dante waited near the doorway. The place where she had once dragged him from death. A telephone rang on the desk. Dante did not touch it. He looked at Nora and waited. She checked the source light, confirmed the line, and answered in her own time. It was Sophia calling from college to ask whether they were still coming to dinner. Nora smiled and said they were. When she replaced the receiver, Dante offered his hand rather than taking hers. Nora considered it for a moment, then placed her fingers in his. They walked out together, leaving the suite door open behind them.